Hello everyone, welcome back to the workshop. I finally have a bigger and better lathe. Now, the Lodge & Shipley that I was going to buy at auction last week went for $2,400, and this is not the Lodge & Shipley, by the way. That lathe went for $2,400, and my max bid was $2,250. So when I lost that lathe, Adam from Small Town Machine Shop sold me this one for $800. This is a 22 by 120 Reed Prentice. Now, 22 by 120, I still need to confirm that. I believe it might actually be a 20-inch lathe, 20 by 96, which would be the same size as that Lodge & Shipley. Now, this lathe has a smaller footprint than the Lodge & Shipley. It's actually about a foot shorter. So this is going to be a better machine for this shop. It came with a 18-inch Cushman 4-jaw chuck, and you can see it's in pieces. It was in the middle of a restoration when Adam bought it, and Adam didn't have the time to finish it. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm still debating whether or not I want to finish painting everything, or if I want to simply clean everything up and put it together as is, with some parts being painted, some parts not being painted. On one hand, paint looks very nice when it is good. On the other hand, coolant and chips and wear can really make paint look very bad. So I'm on the fence about that, and I want to hear your guys' opinion. But before that, let me show you guys around this machine and show you guys the new acquisition. Now this lathe is a beast. It's a good size machine for what I'm doing here in the shop. Morse Taper 5 tailstock. I bought some brand new sleeves for it to go to Morse Taper 3 and Morse Taper 4. So I could use the same tooling that I used in the Chinese lathe, and so I could buy some bigger stuff. Now, Adam wanted to film putting this machine back together for other Reed Prentice owners, and I want to do that as well. And I'm thinking about it, but it's in a bit of a tight spot at the moment. Many of the things, especially behind it, like the taper attachment and the clutch linkage, I don't think I'll be able to film those things. Certain things, like the rear end of the machine, that would be fairly easy to film, but I'm still on the fence trying to decide if I want to film putting this machine back together at all. It's a fairly simple machine, and it's pretty bog standard as far as lathes go. There's nothing about it that is sort of weird, I would say. It's all just levers and linkages. So I'm still debating whether or not I want to film the assembly of this lathe or just do it, because filming, it takes me quite a bit of time. It takes a lot of time to film, and I need this lathe now. I actually have a job over there. Those 4 rollers need to get turned down, and I need this lathe ASAP. So I'm thinking about it. Many of the parts are still out in my truck at the moment. Spindle nose on this machine is in beautiful condition. Gearbox, all the gears are beautiful. The man that was in the middle of restoring this machine said it was a very, very good machine. He said, or he replaced a lot of bushings and bearings, started painting things. Adam measured it, and he did too. Measured the weigh and said that there was very little wear in the machine. So I'm confident that it's going to be a very good machine. Everything, the levers, they all feel good. Everything feels nice and crisp, as it should. Nothing is particularly galled. Now, I will say that the weighs of this machine, while they're not horribly wore, they do have quite a bit of scratching. But that isn't a massive issue. One thing that I noticed is the scratching runs the entire length of the machine. Even all the way down here, you can see a little bit, even in the tailstock ways. What that tells me is that they use the entire length of this machine, which is a good thing. Many of the machines at work, we don't do a huge amount of long work. So right here is really, really wore, because we use right here constantly. But in this machine, you can see that the wear doesn't just suddenly stop when you get out to maybe 2 foot from the chuck. It continues on. So that means that it's probably not horribly wore there, and if it is wore, it's kind of wore, maybe not evenly, but along a longer length, which is a good thing. So tomorrow I will be going back to Adams to pick up the carriage for this machine, and I will start cleaning things up and putting things together tonight. Tonight I'm going to be working on all of the stuff back behind the machine that I can't get to normally. The electrical panel back there is coming off, and that's going to be relocated. The clutch linkages, that all goes back behind the machine. There are things that are back behind it that I want to get done before I put on the chip pan and before I do other things. I do need to take the quick change gearbox off. Adam forgot to put a key in there, which is fine. I don't really mind. That's super easy to do. Well, not super easy, but that's not, doesn't really matter. Another thing I'm going to do before I start buttoning things up too much is, you might notice in here that gear doesn't quite engage all the way. And if you bring it over here, you can feel the fact that there's more tooth in there. So I gotta find a way to make this maybe not engage on that so much, so that it can engage more in there, because that's fully engaged where it sits. And I mean, it's enough, it's enough, but if I can get some more engagement out of that, I would be happier. And I'll be checking all the other gears too, just to see if there's anything else, like that gear there, seeing how much it engages. There are some little things that I need to also talk to Adam about, like a handle missing that I haven't been able to find. So we got to see if we can find that. And I need to get a wrench, the big wrench for the lock collar. Little things like that, stuff that simple. I did order a VFD for this machine that will hopefully be here sometime this week. So I will be running it off of a VFD, a 10 horse VFD. It has a 7.5 horse motor in it right now. I thought about getting a smaller motor for it, 5 horse, but I was looking at the amperage on that motor, and single phase, that motor's 3-phase, so it draws 22.5 amps, but single phase, that's about 34. So I have that amount of power in the shop, and I'm not going to be running it at 34 amps all the time. If I am, I need a bigger motor, and frankly, I need a bigger lathe if I'm using 7.5 horse almost constantly. So this machine is going to be a fine machine. Now, another thing I'm probably going to end up doing sometime down the road is making a new sprocket for the motor. Not that that one's bad, but I want more speed. This machine, let me check the nameplate, not nameplate, the speed chart. 530 RPM max. Now, that's usable. I can use that. I run at 500 RPM all the time, but a lot of the tooling that I use and a lot of the sizes of material, I like running more in the 700 RPM range, and I would like the option to go up to maybe 9 or 1000 RPM. So I'll be making a new sprocket, to drive the pulley up to about 900 RPM. That way all these numbers, they'll be doubled. So 24 RPM will be the max or lowest speed, and 1060 will be the max. So that will kind of, all the gears in here in the banjo, or they all have roller bearings, so these will all take it. These gears will all take it. These gears should take it as well. These all have roller bearings throughout. It's all roller bearings. There are a couple of bronze bushings, but that's all right. And if I speed it up, the gearing is actually going to like it more, because you're supposed to put, say, 7.5 horse through this machine at, you know, a certain gear combination. Well, I'm going to be putting it 7.5 horse more speed, double the speed, but half the torque. So, say 24 RPM, 7.5 horse. Now it's going to be 48 RPM, 7.5 horse. So the torque, everything is going to receive half the torque. So, if that makes sense. So the gearing should be fine as far as less chance that I will shear teeth, because the motor will have less leverage on the big pulley, and so less force. And 24 RPM as my lowest speed, that is plenty. I typically run at about 50 RPM. That's the lowest RPM that I will ever, not will ever, but that I ever run regularly. So 24 should be good. And if I ever need it slower, I am going to be putting a VFD on it, so I could slow it down using the VFD as well. I'm not going to speed the motor up using the VFD. That's bad for the motor. I'd rather just put a bigger sprocket on there. Now I'm starting to put things back together, and this is where I'm going to leave you guys and sign off. I'm going to put the rear end of this lathe back together. I do have to take this guy off before I do that and insert the key into here, because this guy does not have a key and it needs a key. So that's where I'm going to leave you guys. I would film this, but this machine, the feed mechanism is so standard that I feel like it would be a waste filming it. It's such a, it's just like a lot of lathes. Very, very similar. Not exact, but very, very similar. And I don't want to film things that people wouldn't be super interested in. Like a lathe, parts of a lathe that you could find on most lathes, most common lathes. So thank you all for watching, liking, and subscribing. You will be seeing a lot more of this machine tool. I will be filming many of the parts of putting this tool together, this machine together, as well as cleaning it up and painting some of it. I'm still on the fence as to whether or not I want to paint the whole thing. Let me know what you guys think. It is covered in oil from transporting it. There's a sight glass over there that was left open, and oil just got drenched across this whole thing, which is, I don't mind, because it's always going to be covered in oil. But also, I'm still on the fence as to whether or not I want to paint it and make it look really nice. Mechanically, it's going to be brand new. Basically brand new. But, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think, your opinions on it. My opinion is it's going to be used, so make it look as nice as you can, but don't spend too much time, because all of that, the coolant I'll be running on this is probably going to eat away any paint. So, I don't know. With that all being said, have a good day.